Salvage mechanics in Star Citizen are some of the most anticipated and delayed gameplay loops in the project's history. Originally expected to have an early release a few years ago, and then sort of be iterated on like they have with the mining gameplay loop, and expanding that gameplay loop out more and more and more. But we have yet to have any salvage gameplay in the game. Every year for the last few years, and sometimes multiple times a year, the salvage mechanics have been sort of on the roadmap and then delayed, and then on the roadmap and then delayed, and keep on getting pushed back before reappearing. Alpha 3.15 does have the sort of expanded looting mechanics, and blowing up ships now leaves a box of their local inventory, so this isn't really salvage, but it is more reasons to explore nearby a wreck of a ship after you've destroyed it, or to actually get involved with ships beyond just combat and as points of interest, so there are things to find. Salvage has a lot of mechanics that are being worked on now, and it looks like potentially we may get some in the very near future. Alpha 3.16 is currently pegged to have Tier 0 salvage with hand salvage mechanics, but also Cloud Imperium have conversely made a statement talking about a change in release strategy for features that we haven't actually really seen the effects of yet, this change in strategy. So, Cloud Imperium now plan to have features released with more flesh on their bones, and not an isolated feature released without any gameplay. They don't want a feature that isn't of any function at the time of its release, and they want mission and gameplay systems to support any given mechanic. This will have features integrated typically, or at least more typically, into Squadron 42, and then sort of worked on, iterated on, before then going to the Persistent Universe a bit later. Obviously, there are some features that are Persistent Universe focused that will just get a bit more attention before going to live. They just want more flesh on the bones of any given mechanic before they release it, basically. This shouldn't increase the overall time to complete the game, though. In fact, it might actually help reduce it, but the first iterations of any new mechanics may take some extra time before turning up in the Persistent Universe than they otherwise would have, because they spent more time making sure the sort of gameplay there was more expanded out and more iterated on and further down the line. Cloud Imperium also sort of describes it as trying to get rid of the Tier 0 implementations in most cases, so that they're more refined before going out. The question is, though, will this affect salvage and the rest of the planned content for 2021 and Alpha 3.16. At the moment, the roadmap is showing Tier 0 salvage for 3.16 by the end of the year. So, what's expected with that initial release, assuming that it's still there? Because Cloud Imperium have had chances to remove that from the roadmap, they haven't, and they've chosen to keep it there, so I'm expecting it there. So, Alpha 3.16, that's supposed to contain hand salvage and potentially early repair gameplay. This uses either a multi-tool attachment or dedicated salvage tool that a player equips to then strip the hull of a ship or a salvage point. This is then stored as a resource that can be used to repair or be sold. We know that in 3.16 there are also plans to have the dynamic economy simulate and affect the price of repairs, and HPMC, the material for repair, which assumedly is what you collect in the cans in your hand salvage tools. Cloud Imperium did recently say as well that ship-based salvage beyond hand salvage, was planned for 2022, along with the Vulture. So the Vulture is currently on Star Citizen's Progress Tracker roadmap for completion by the end of Q1 2022. That said, that isn't an indication of exactly when it's going to be in our hands. There could be delays to that, and that's on the Progress Tracker. There could be a lot more work that needs to go into the Vulture, and also it's very likely that they're going to phase these two in together, although it's possible they'll go for a different scenario of implementation, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. There are different types of salvage. So both the hand tool salvage and the Vulture are hull stripping salvage. They take the top layer or valuable materials off the top of a hull and then be sold, basically, or used as repair material. The removal of physical components is probably one of the most simplest types of salvaging. This takes a component from a ship. You could take a shield generator from a wreck. It doesn't have to actually be a wreck, I suppose. It could just be any ship. You might have to forcibly disconnect the component you're taking by cutting it out with a cutting tool or moving it with a tractor tool or whatever. But you take a component or a weapon or whatever from a ship or a vehicle, bam, take it back to your ship. That is the simplest type of salvaging, literally taking components. Now, based on how far physical components are to completion, this could actually be a type of salvage that is done before hull stripping or before ship-based hull stripping comes in. We know that Cloud Imperium have been working on physical components for a while. We know that there's physical shield emitters coming out very soon. We know that they've been making all the ships, sort of bringing them up to standard, so they have the cupboards and sort of little nooks and hidey holes so they can place all the components that we'll need to service and actually have hooked up to ships. It's incredibly important as a gameplay core as well, physicalized components. They want to get this in-game ASAP as far as I'm aware, so I hope we will see it next year. Larger scale salvaging is more salvage, as in MAW, putting scrap and large pieces of ships into like a big grinder and or crusher, and then compressing that scrap down into cubes or something of material value. The Reclaimer is going to be able to do this. It's its sort of primary focus, tractoring pieces of salvage into its mouth, its maw, and then processing them. Some people are expecting the Reclaimer to have some salvage functionality potentially with the Vulture next year, or even potentially to be able to do hull stripping, though I do find this less likely as it's a bit more in depth for the Reclaimer to get its sort of salvaging function. That said, we don't have any confirmation of exactly what the plans for salvage are for next year, beyond Cloud Imperium saying they wanted ship-based salvage in next year. It's only my assumption that it's going to be hull stripping. That does make the most sense, though, that it's going to be a focus just because of the evolution of the hand salvage that they've been working on. Some of the other things that Cloud Imperium have talked about are salvage charges. These would be placed by hand and used to blow up sections of ships so that you could more easily process them into cubes or more easily strip their hulls or just move the pieces more easily via tractor beam. Larger tractor beams are coming too at some point. A dedicated tool that's going to be larger and more powerful than the multi-tool attachment, but also you're going to see tractor beams on ships. And they're going to be much, much more powerful, based on their size, I suppose. Also, as previously mentioned, culling tools. These are potentially going to be scaled up for salvage operations. At least, that is what I reckon. They'll probably have sort of salvage beams that allow you to laser and melt and destroy sort of the hulls of a ship and then sort of tractor it in the same way that you do with mining. That would be my expectation of one of the ways they do salvage. There is another type of salvage that they've previously talked about too, siphoning. This is the extraction of gas and liquids from ships, but also it's pretty much the same as the refueling mechanics that Cloud Imperium have planned, or at least very closely connected to them, though more focused on taking fuel, gas and liquid and atmosphere out of ships. And it's likely that the Starfarer will be able to do this as well. It's very likely that it's going to be a siphoning type salvage ship along with its other purposes as well as potentially gas farming, potentially, and refining and all this sort of stuff. It is obviously a refueling, fuel processing ship, that Starfarer, and we're sort of waiting for Cloud Imperium to talk more about how exactly the Starfarer is going to fit in the verse and exactly all the things it will be able to do, and will it have these modular components, and how exactly is refueling going to work. We've seen them work briefly on a sort of refueling arm for the Starfarer. We know that they want to get refueling in probably around when Pyro and 4.0 go live as well, because Pyro, that new star system, is quite big and there's going to be limited opportunities to refuel there. So having a Starfarer that can then refuel you makes a load of sense. They've also sort of talked about a potential offshoot of salvage, which would be data recovery and extraction too, which, I mean, yeah, it is salvaging it from ships technically, but I suppose you could say, well, this thing is very similar. Cargo transport of salvaged goods is salvage, and there's lots of stuff that does touch on salvage gameplay, and a huge amount of this is all connected and then relies on lots of other things. I very much think that if we see data recovery and extraction like that, it will be part of the sort of data as cargo mechanics rather than as salvage. Even with Cloud Imperium's new release strategy, I think we can expect iterations on the gameplay loops like mining with this mechanic. As I've laid out, it's actually a few different mechanics all making up the gameplay loop, and the economy is already expanded out enough to support this, really, or is at least expanding out to support this. Even if they release each of these salvage sort of gameplay loops separately, the game's going to support them pretty much wherever you release them in its cycle now. You can plop more salvage in, and you'd be able to do that. It'd be able to be part of the economy. You could have hull stripping in later, you could have it in before. Doesn't really matter. It's very possible as well that some of these mechanics might have been changed or simplified somewhat since they originally talked about them. I actually expect the general salvage to be very similar to mining where possible, and not overly complex. We also see expanded selling being in like Alpha 3.16, and the Dynamic Universe Sim taking control of various encounters and prices, which is going to help support whenever they add new materials and new mechanics like salvage in. You go, well, how do you make money from this? Well, the dynamic economy supports these types of materials now, and you can make money from trading them and all that sort of jazz. And when I say some of these mechanics are simplified, I don't mean that they're going to be boring. I don't mean they're going to be super repetitive. There might be cases of, we should probably disconnect this power plant before salvaging or blowing up this part of the ship. It's going to be thoughts about how quickly and readily to salvage. You're going to be careful around ammo and missile bays. They might blend some hacking or stealth gameplay into some areas. Also, if you are out salvaging, you may be attacked by pirates. Why has this ship been destroyed here? Do you have rights to salvage a ship? That's some of the stuff we don't know. We do not know how the laws of certain areas and systems are going to be enforced. We also don't know if there's going to be sort of illegal reclamations where they go, well, you know what, someone's claimed their ship after it's been destroyed. Well, these people have the rights to reclaim that. Maybe missions will be generated by the Dynamic Universe Sim to actually get players to go and salvage that, but it's salvaged for another company effectively, and they only get a fraction of the payment to the player. And you can expect to see salvage and reclamation focused missions beyond that as well. How are we going to find salvage and scan for it then? Well, probably in the same way that you find minables. They've referenced a few things about salvage focused scanners, and you'll be able to change a scanner out on your ship so that you'll be able to focus on particular things. But players are also going to know what wrecks and derelicts are worth checking out based on experience as well. How damaged does the area look? What's been happening here? What wreck is that? Is it likely to have something of value? Generally, scanning is going to give you some indication if something is over in an area. Once you get closer, you'll be able to scan it further for more info, just like we can now. But you'll probably have a lot of options with larger wrecks. Do I EVA out and try and grab some components? Do I gnaw up the ship just as it is? Is this too big a task for my vulture? Do I want to hull strip it, take the components out of it, and then blow bits of it up and then nom it up with a reclaimer? Is this like a whole salvage operation, like maybe with an Idris? It would be. Are some ships savable and rescuable, and sort of like, well, actually, this ship isn't too badly damaged at all. I could probably revamp the ship. I could probably get this Idris and put new components on it, and it actually would work. Unfortunately, we don't have timelines and hard dates on salvage and its evolution. Maybe some at the end of this year. Currently, as I said, there's hand-based salvage for Alpha 3.16, and they did say that they wanted ship-based salvage and more salvage in for next year. Now, it's possible that when they referenced they wanted ship-based salvage in for next year, maybe they actually meant, well, actually, we are going to delay hand-based salvage to next year as well. Salvage, for some reason, is just a mechanic that is hugely wanted and hugely hyped, but erratically delayed. I would say erratically delayed. It's not erratically delayed. It's constantly been delayed. And we'll only know if the trend continues with it being delayed when 3.16 is more set in stone. We could see more salvage ships as well in the future, or vehicles as well for salvage on the ground, because probably we want to salvage some ground-based stuff. We also might see modules for things like the Caterpillar, giving the Caterpillar salvage capabilities. Yeah? Could there be drones for finding or extracting salvage? Maybe. Very much for scouting. I suspect you'll use drones. I mean, the Reclaimer, for example, has drones. But what do you think? Boom! That's all I have for you this time. I hope that we get the start of salvage in 2021 and for 3.16. But what do you think? Will salvage see more delays? Are we going to start to see it later this year and much more next year? Are you a budding salvage boy and keenly awaiting it being added to the game? What type of salvage are you keen to do? Are you going to be going around in the Vulture and doing hull stripping? Are you going to be doing it by hand? Are you going to be stealing or otherwise legally taking components out of ships? Or are you going to be treasure hunting in your giant reclaimer and nomming up ships? Hom nom nom. Whatever your thoughts, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. You should definitely check out nordvpn.com/BoredGamer. There are absolutely limitless amount of unproven health benefits that I could make up about that product now, but you probably want it because of its security and privacy benefits. Or maybe the ability to appear to be in a different country so you can tell your friends that you're on holiday, or, I don't know, view Netflix from somewhere else. You'll like Nord so much you'll probably buy it for all of your friends and family for Christmas. Just an idea. Links are also below. Something much more random that you might be interested in is that one of my friends is involved with a Vampire Masquerade roleplay Kickstarter, which is currently on until the 5th of November. War of Ages helps introduce Nordic LARP to players that haven't done that before, but also sort of bridges tabletop LARP and Mind's Eye Theatre all together. Check that out if you're into roleplay or vampire, or you want to get some sort of roleplay, vampire universe aspecty thing going on. What ship are we giving away in October? It is one of the most exciting ships we've given away, and one of the most popular. It's the Argo Cargo. So many people liked it, we thought we'd give one away, instead of a Mercury Star Runner, or a Carrack, or something else. You can do fun things, like fly around a planet, or fly very slowly into the sun. And it also makes my top 16 ships that I liked in the Ship Showdown this year. What else could you possibly want other than that ship? Well, I'm also giving away a 100i with a Star Citizen Game Package 2, given to another random commenter selected in the same way. If you'd like to further support the channel, you can join a load of other people that already do, by clicking the YouTube join button underneath one of my videos, or via Patreon. It goes a long way to help feed mine and Zin's ship habit. We buy lots of spaceships, well, at least I do. She gets paid a real human wage, like a real human. Thanks for watching, please take care, and I'll see you in the verse.